Hello everyone, warm welcome to Super Coaching Regulatory Bodies YouTube channel by Testbook. My name is Madhav Sir. I welcome you all in a very important session. We call it as Finance Current Affairs. If you know that for RBI Grade B examination, along with that, if I talk about SEBI Grade A examination, then SIDB, PFRDA, IFSCA, for all the exams, finance current affairs is really very important. So I welcome you all in the finance current affairs for RBI Grade B examination, and we are targeting RBI Grade B 2025 examination, and this session is live thrice a week, that is on Tuesday, Thursday, as well as on Saturday at 5:15 p.m. I'll try my level best to cover each and every point in much detail so that the news which we are covering, it won't only help you to answer the phase 1 questions, but it will help you to answer the phase 2 questions both, that is MCQs as well as descriptive. So we will be discussing each and every news in much detail so that you can get ready not only for the MCQ section but also for your descriptive part, because you know very well that current affairs has a great importance for descriptive section as well. So let's begin the discussion. But before I start, may I have a reply in the comment section that I'm audible, visible, everything is fine, we are good to go. So I'll start my discussion with the very first news. But before that, if you want to download the PDF of this session, the PDF of this session will be available on this link. You can just scan the code and join the Telegram channel in order to find out the PDF. The first news which I have for you all is, which is really very important, that says RBI announces Standing External Advisory Committee for evaluating the applications for universal banks as well as small finance banks. What I'm trying to say, we know that RBI is not only responsible for the regulation, of banking sector, but according to Banking Regulation Act 1949, RBI is responsible to provide banking license. That means if a new bank is set up, license is given by RBI in order to review the applications. Means the one who wants to open a small finance bank or maybe universal bank, they will be applying to RBI. RBI will check out the documents pre-hand, and then those documents, those applications will be forwarded to a committee, and that committee will review that whether this applicant is fit for the license or not. So let's discuss all the important areas in this news itself. What all things I'm going to discuss. First of all, I'll discuss about this particular committee. We'll discuss the chairman of this committee, as well as I'll just name the other members as well, but you need to remember the name of chairman only. Moving ahead, I will be discussing with you what actually small finance bank is, how it is different from universal bank, what are the criterias for a company or for an organization to get the license of small finance bank, and lately we'll discuss the conditions, requirements to set up a universal bank. So let's begin the discussion. As you see from one news itself, we are going to learn ample of things, and moving ahead, we have the second important news of the day, and that is the annual report on integrated ombudsman scheme. So integrated ombudsman scheme report has been given by RBI. And if I talk about this particular report, we'll discuss what is actually integrated ombudsman scheme, then we'll discuss the entities which are regulated under this scheme, and then finally we'll jump to the important points which you need to cover from this scheme, from this annual report itself. So let's get started. We go with the first news of the day, and the first news says RBI has set up Standing External Advisory Committee in order to evaluate applications for which bank? So for the universal banks as well as small finance banks. Remember that this particular committee has been set up with a tenure of how many years? Sir, 3 years. That means in next 3 years, all the applicants who will be applying to seek the license for universal bank or small finance bank, their application is going to be reviewed under this particular committee for next 3 years. We call this committee as standing external. We call it as a standing external advisory committee, which is headed by whom? So this committee is headed by Mr. M.K. Jain. I don't know how many of you are aware, but Mr. M.K. Jain is a commercial banker. After that, he has served as the Deputy Governor of RBI, and now he has been appointed as the chairman of this particular committee. Now, he has been appointed as the chairman of this particular committee. Moving on to the next point. The next point over here is in our discussion that the committee name of the committee is clear, but the second question is we have the chairpersons. Second question is we have the chairperson. Who is the chairperson? So MK Jain is the chairperson. The next point which is available, or I would say the next point which is important for you all is the next point which is important for everyone is the other members. I'm not saying that remember these names. I'm not asking you to learn these names. What I'm trying to say is you must know all these names so that whenever you go through with the newspapers or any news article, you can relate that yes, these members are currently, you can relate that yes, these members, they are currently part of external advisory committee, and this external advisory committee is responsible for what? So it is responsible to review the applicants who are applying for what, sir? Who are applying for the banking license. Chalo, let's get ahead. So MK Jain is clear. Along with that, we have Miss R Iyer. Then we have PV Sundaram. We have Hemanji Contractor, and the end we have NS Kannan. But obviously, what is important? The name of the chairman is important. Rest is just to read and leave. Moving to the next part of this particular news. The next part is, so what do you understand by the word small finance bank? See, small finance bank is termed as differentiated bank. Why we call it as differentiated bank? The reason is it do not perform the operations as same as that of scheduled banks. The conditions to seek the license is also not same in comparison to the scheduled commercial banks. So in that particular scenario, small finance bank, as the name suggests, this bank was set up on the recommendation of Usha Thorat committee, and this committee recommended to set up the small finance bank with a motive of financial inclusion. And as per the name, this bank is focusing to provide what? So this bank is focusing to provide huge number of small loans. And in case of priority sector lending, sir, the limit for small finance bank in case of priority sector lending is 75% of ANBC, and this limit is same as what? So this limit is same as your RRBs, that is regional rural banks. This limit is same as your RRBs, that is regional rural banks. Moving on to the next point. The next point is, so what these small finance banks can do? So they can accept deposits. Yes. They can provide loan. Yes. Unlike payment banks, we know this very well that payment banks, they can accept deposits only, and that too a limited deposit per account. But small finance banks, they are allowed to accept deposits as well as provide loan. They even distribute mutual funds, insurance products, and other simple third party products. 75% of their total adjusted net bank credit is going to be lended for the priority sector, that is priority sector lending limit is 75%. What is the maximum loan size? So the maximum loan size would be 10% of the capital fund to single borrower and 15% of the capital fund to a group. This is really very important. This is something when you read this point in your examination, you will feel out of the box. So in order to avoid that scenario in the examination, I have included it in this news itself. Lastly, minimum 50% of loans should be up to 25 lakhs. What does it mean? It means that if small finance bank is giving 30 loans in a day, or 30 loans have been given by small finance bank. Out of these 30 loans, 50% means 15 loans. 30 में से कितने 15 लोन का जो वैल्यू होगा that should be up to 25 lakhs each. I hope now you are understanding the point why we call it as small finance bank. So we call it as small finance bank because there is a condition that out of the total lending, 50% of the total number of loans should be of value up to 25 lakhs each. Now the question is, so what all operations they cannot do? What all operations they cannot perform? Then the answer is, sir, they cannot lend to big corporates or groups. Other financial activities of the promoter must not be mingled or confused with the banking activities. It cannot set up subsidiaries to undertake non-banking financial services, and it cannot be a business correspondent of any bank. It cannot be a business correspondent of any bank. These are the areas, or I would say the operations, which cannot be performed by small finance bank. Now, when we say small finance bank, then the next point is, so what are the eligibility criterias an applicant has to fulfill so that the applicant can receive the license of small finance bank? यानी कि small finance bank के license को लेने के लिए क्या क्या eligibility criterias है जो fulfill करने होंगे? Let's check them out. If I talk about the criterias, the first criteria is, these days it's a licensing window will be open on tap. Open on tap means if you want to apply today, you can apply today. You want to apply tomorrow, you can apply tomorrow. You want to apply after 6 months, you can do that. There will be no window given by RBI कि बस इन्हीं 6 महीने में आप apply कर सकते हैं. That is not the case. Second point, minimum paid up capital or net worth shall be 200 crores. Earlier, at the time of introduction, it was 100 crores, but then it has been revised and it has been increased to the what value? So it has been increased to the value of 200 crore rupees. It has been increased to the value of 200 crore rupees. Lastly, primary cooperative banks, urban cooperative banks, they must have the initial requirement of net worth 100 crores. If an urban cooperative bank is seeking the license for a small finance bank, their paid up capital, or I would say the best word would be their net worth should be their net worth should be at least 100 crores, and this 100 crores net worth has to be increased to 200 crores in next 5 years. So today, if you want to apply as an urban cooperative bank, you can apply, but condition is minimum net worth 100 crores and you need to reach to a value of 200 crores in next 5 years as per the condition given by the RBI. Moving on to the next point. The next point says, small finance banks, they will be given scheduled bank status, but they will be different from commercial bank, as I have discussed. That is the reason we call them as differentiated banks. That is the reason we call them as differentiated banks. Small finance bank will have a general permission to open banking outlets. That means you can open up your branches. Secondly, if there is a payment bank which is already set up in the country, after 5 years of operations, a payment bank can also apply for small finance bank. Payment bank can also apply for small finance bank license. Is it clear, everyone? Payment bank can also apply for small finance bank license. So I repeat it quickly. First is, some minimum capital is 200 crores. In case of primary or urban cooperative bank, it is 100 crores net worth required at the time of application. Later on, it should be increased to 200 crores within 5 years. Next point is, so small finance banks, they will be given a status of scheduled bank. That means they can borrow the funds from RBI. They can deposit their surplus with RBI. They can even enjoy the other benefits provided by RBI to the scheduled banks of the country. Every bank is termed as scheduled bank when it is included under second schedule of RBI Act 1934, where RBI provides on day-to-day basis, fund management as well as advisory services, and RBI include these small scheduled banks into the clearing houses. They have the membership in the clearing houses so that they can provide you with n number of payment services. Lastly, if I talk about a payment bank can also apply for small finance bank license, but after completing 5 years. Now let's move on to the second one. The second part of this news is, that is universal bank, because they have said committee has been set up for small finance bank and universal bank. Now the question is, sir, can you give an example of universal bank? Actually, there is a term which is universal banking. So the banks which are involved in universal banking, they are known as universal banks. And in India, currently all the scheduled commercial banks, they are included under the category of what? So they are included under the category of universal banks. If I talk about, there was a committee set up in 1998 after the recommendation of that particular committee. All the commercial banks, they have been included under the category of what? They have been included under the category of universal bank. Universal bank is a bank which provides all types of services, whether it is retail banking, investment banking, and other services. This organization is involved in multiple financial services along with banking, which include bank assurance. It also distributes mutual funds, and many other services are performed. Now, if I talk about the eligibility criteria, resident who is, I would say the individual resident or professionals who have minimum experience of 10 years, in banking and finance sector, and that too at senior level, they are allowed to promote universal banks. Second is large industry houses are excluded as eligible entities, but they are permitted to invest in the bank up to 10%. So large industries, they are excluded, they are not included, but they can invest in the banks up to 10%. Moving on to the next point, so not less than 51% of the total paid up equity capital of NOFHC shall be owned by promoter or promoter group. Now, this is really very important. The point is, what do you understand by NOFHC? Can you give me the full form in the comment section? Can you give me the full form in the comment section, please? Guys, can you give me the full form in the comment section? Question is very clear. And if I give you a hint, it is basically a type of NBFC. If you remember, we have discussed in our previous sessions also. So it is known as non-operative financial holding company. Non-operative financial holding company means a non-operative financial holding company is basically a company which do not perform financial operations on its own. Rather, it sets up its subsidiaries to perform the financial services. So in order to set up a bank, in order to seek the bank license, first you need to set up NOFHC. Not less than 51% of the total paid up capital should be owned by promoters or promoter group. Then we have entities or group in the private sector that are owned and controlled by residents. They are also allowed to apply. They are also allowed to apply for the banking license, but their minimum asset value should be 500 crores. Secondly, existing NBFCs that are controlled by the Indian residents with successful track record, they can also apply for the same license, that is the universal bank. What is the minimum capital requirements? And in case of universal bank, minimum capital requirement is 500 crores. In case of small finance bank, minimum capital requirement was 200 crore rupees. The next point is, if we talk about the promoters or the promoter groups, they shall be holding minimum 40% of the paid up voting equity capital of the bank, which shall be logged in for 5 years. First condition is promoters or group of promoters, they should hold 51% of NOHFC, firstly. Secondly, these promoters or promoter groups through NOHFC, they should hold 40%. They should hold 40% of the voting rights of the bank for at least first 5 years. Promoter group shareholding shall be brought down. You can decrease this 40% shareholding to 15%, but after how many years? Or I would say this can be done within 15 years from the date of commencement. So 5 years, there is a locking period of 40%. And after that, it can be reduced to 15% within 15 years. It can be reduced to 15% within 15 years of operations. If I talk about FDI, this is a really very important question. If someone asks you, sir, FDI is allowed in banking sector, what will be your answer? Your answer is yes, sir. FDI is allowed in banking sector, but in case of public sector bank, or I would say in case of government owned commercial banks, we call them as public sector bank. For example, State Bank of India, for example, PNB. In those banks, FDI limit is up to 20%, but in case of private banks, FDI limit is 74%. So right now, licensing announcement which has been done, it is obviously done for the private applicants that they can apply and seek the license, and if they are seeking the license, they can enjoy FDI of what value? So they can enjoy FDI of 74% value, which is really very important, you need to remember. The last point which you need to remember under universal bank is 25% of the total branches, 25% of the total branches should be opened up in unbanked rural units. Should be opened up in unbanked rural unit. How they define rural unit? So rural unit basically means a unit with population up to 9,999. They are defining it on the basis of population, and that is up to 9,999. So these are few conditions which you need to remember. I'll quickly brush them up for you. First condition is if you are an individual or a professional and you want to apply for the banking license, you must have 10 years of banking and financial sector experience. Second is large industries, they are not eligible directly to apply for bank license, but they can hold up to 10% in these banks. Third point is 51% of the total paid up capital of non-operating housing, non-operating non-operative financial holding company, non-operative financial holding company should be 51% with the promoters and promoters group. But in case of bank, promoters and promoters group shareholding should be at least 40% for minimum 5 years. Once the bank starts its operation, and it can be reduced to 15% in next 15 years. The next point is the private sectors. I would talk about the entities or groups which are defined under FEMA. They have successful track record of at least 10 years, provided that they have a total asset of 500 crores, they are eligible. Along with this, existing NBFCs which are doing really very well with a good track record of last 10 years, they are eligible. Minimum capital requirement is 500 crores. This has been discussed. And FDI is 74% and 25% of the branches will be opened up in rural areas, or I would say unbanked rural units. How the rural unit is defined? So rural unit is defined on the basis of population, that is up to 9,999. Got it, guys? Is it clear? So if someone asks you, what do you understand by the term small finance bank? You are ready. What do you understand by universal bank? Again, you are ready. You are clear with the eligibility criteria, and even you are clear with the current news that a new committee has been set up in order to provide license, for small finance banks as well as universal banks. If it is clear, just give me yes, sir. If it is clear, just give me yes, sir, so that we can begin the discussion. If it is clear, just give me yes, sir, so that we can begin the discussion. Okay, thank you, Shivam. Thank you so much. Now, moving on to the next news of the day. Again, a really very important news. I will be coming up with a separate session on the same where we will be discussing this news in much more detail, but I'm just giving you a gist which you need to remember for phase 1 as well as phase 2 MCQs. But what kind of descriptive question can be asked from this particular report, and how you need to utilize the data of this report while writing a descriptive answer, for that I will be conducting a separate session where we will be covering this in much detail. So let's check out the basics which you need to know. So annual report of Ombudsman scheme under RBI has been published. So the name is Integrated Ombudsman Scheme. Integrated Ombudsman Scheme is basically the scheme which was introduced in 2021, and this scheme was the result of merging 3 different schemes. One was Banking Ombudsman Scheme, there was an other scheme that is Ombudsman Scheme for NBFCs, and we had Ombudsman Scheme for payment participants. Ombudsman Scheme for payment participants, or I would say Ombudsman Scheme for digital transactions. So these were the 3 schemes. Now these 3 schemes were merged into one, and the resultant scheme is named as Integrated Ombudsman Scheme, and this Integrated Ombudsman Scheme contains 24 RBI Ombudsman offices, as well as it includes centralized receipt and processing center which has been set up in Chandigarh, and this is the center where all the complaints from the entire country are received. So one center is receiving the complaints from the entire country, and as per the availability as well as your location, your complaint is assigned to the regional office. So what is the benefit? So earlier it was witnessed that some of the regional offices, they were overburdened, and some of the regional offices, they were underburdened because of the intensity of complaints in a specific area. Now your complaint will be raised. I'll not say specifically bounded that it should be raised to the ombudsman office which is in your area. That is not always true, or that would not be always true, but yes, this criteria is going to help in distributing. It will help in distributing the work pressure, or I would say the task, uniformly on the different ombudsman offices. If someone asks you how many offices are there, so 24 offices are there. There is one term that is contact center. If you need to know the process of complaining, if you need more information on this, you can call on a toll-free number and you will be guided so that you can complain accordingly. Moving on to the first point of the news. So the first point talks about, under this particular news, or I would say under this particular scheme, how many entities are included or which all entities are included. As I said, banking ombudsman scheme. This scheme included commercial banks, rural banks, scheduled primary cooperative banks, non-scheduled primary cooperative banks with deposit size of 50 crores and above. They all are included under integrated ombudsman scheme. Second entity is NBFCs. Which all NBFCs? Sir, NBFCs which we call them as deposit accepting NBFCs, and second is the NBFC which has a customer interface and it has an asset size of greater than 100 crores. They are included under this scheme. Lastly, we have the payment system participants, example PhonePe. And lastly, we have the CICs, that is credit information companies like CIBIL. They are also included under this particular scheme. This means the entities which I just discussed, if you have any complaint as a customer against these entities, you can register your complaint to RBI through integrated ombudsman scheme, and these schemes, I would say these complaints are going to be resolved by the ombudsman officers of the country. Now, if I talk about the current data, that is the report from 1st April 2023 to 31st March 2024, what all things are important? The first part is RBI Integrated Ombudsman Scheme has received total 9,34,355 complaints. This count is not important. I've just highlighted it so that you should know the volume of complaints. It is around 9.5 lakhs. That is more than sufficient. And this count is from 1st April 2023 to 31st March 2024. But this is important. In comparison to previous year, sir, the complaint number has increased by 32%. Complaint number has increased by 32%. 24 ombudsman offices, because you know, if you want to complain, you can directly go to the ombudsman office, or you can use digital mode like email and many other platforms which are available to register your complaint. So the complaints which have been received by offices of Reserve Bank of India Ombudsman, offices of, see, if you are confused, ORBIOS, it stands for Offices of the RBI Ombudsman. So the offices of the RBI Ombudsman has received 31% out of the total complaints, and 68% complaints have been received by CRPC. That is what? So that is Centralized Receipt and Processing Center, which is set up in Chandigarh. Out of the total complaints received at the offices, out of the total complaints which have been received at the offices, 88.77% received through digital mode. That means if you are receiving the complaint, but at what? At office, so it was done in a digital mode, which include online complaint management system portal of RBI. You can email as well as you can mail to the centralized public grievance redress and monitoring system. Moving on to the next point, so the share of complaints from individual. So if I talk about the share of complaints which have been, or I would say the complaints which have been done by the individuals in total complaints is 87.27%. Rest of the complaints have been done by the entities, not by the individual. मतलब आपने और मैंने एज अ ग्राहक, एज अ कस्टमर, हमने कितने परसेंट कंप्लेंट्स की है? टोटल का 87.27%. बाकी कंप्लेंट जो है वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस ने की है. अब इसमें भी अगर हम बात करें, मैक्सिमम जो कंप्लेंट्स हैं वो रजिस्टर हुई है किसके अगेंस्ट? बैंक्स के अगेंस्ट 82.28%, और 14.53% कंप्लेंट्स रजिस्टर हुई है एनबीएफसीज के लिए, और बाकी जो कुछ परसेंट कंप्लेंट्स बची दैट वर अगेंस्ट योर पेमेंट पार्टिसिपेंट्स एज वेल एज योर सीआईसीज, दैट इज क्रेडिट इंफॉर्मेशन कंपनीज. सबसे ज्यादा जो कंप्लेंट्स हैं दैट इज अगेंस्ट or related to what? So it is related to loans and advances. So if you have borrowed a loan from the bank and now you have a complaint against the bank because bank is not fulfilling the compliances which have been mentioned at the time of signing the agreement, then you can write to the ombudsman, and the majority complaints or highest weightage of complaints was related to loans and advances. Complaints which were disposed of by the offices of RBI Ombudsman is 95.10%. And if you're not happy, if you're not satisfied with the Ombudsman solution, then you can apply at the appellate tribunal. And this time, the appellate authority has received 82 appeals. It has received 82 appeals. But I have a question. What is my question? My question is, guys, I don't know whether you have read somewhere or not. It is generally mentioned on different platforms when you search on Google that only and only customers can approach to the ombudsman to complain against regulated entities. Regulated entities cannot complain against customer in front of ombudsman. We have read this. Make sure after listening to me, after this session, go and search. You will find the same statement. But there is a point. The point says, so 72 appeals was done by the customers or complainants and 10 appeals were done by the regulated entities. Sir, how is it possible? How is it possible? So if you want to understand this scheme in this much depth, then you need to attend that separate session as well, which I will be discussing soon. Got it? So mark this. Moving on to the next. So CRPC, that is your center which has been set up in Chandigarh. It has witnessed increase in complaints, which was 30.10% higher in comparison to the previous year. If I talk about the contact center, the toll-free number or the toll-free facility, which gives you the clarification information, it has received around 7,19,000 calls in this year. So if this is a newly introduced platform by RBI, and if it is witnessing an increase in number of registered complaints by 30%, that means this particular platform is doing well and it is going to grow at a very faster rate in the near future. So these are the important areas which you need to remember. If you have seen, I have analyzed the report very well for you. And on the basis of those analysis, I have came up with these pointers, and these pointers are going to help you in phase 1 as well as in phase 2 objective questions. But if you want to understand the annual report, if you want to do the analysis of this annual report, then we will be coming up in a different session as well. So that will be all from my side, guys, in this particular session. I hope you must have enjoyed the discussion. Do not forget to download the PDF, revise the PDF at least twice, so that you can remember this data and you can use this data in answering a number of questions in your upcoming examination. So if you want to enroll on Testbook platform, you must use a code MADHAV, that is Madhav, so that you can get maximum discount. And due to Republic Day, I would say beautiful offers are waiting for you, and you can just enjoy those offers by using MADHAV in order to get maximum discount. So thank you so much, guys, for joining. We'll catch you in the next session. Good luck. God bless you all. Bye-bye.